Hello, everyone. This is Morgan here. I'm so excited to do this live chat today. This is my first live chat to do, so bear with me. Melanie's done several, and she's awesome. And she's going to be awesome today, but just give us some grace today because we're figuring out technology and everything. But we're so glad that, hey, Ruth, we're so glad that y'all are here with us today. And that you're part of our group. I've really enjoyed this group, and it wouldn't be anything without you. So thank you so much for joining and commenting and posting and talking about this genre, this style of books that we love. We, of course, have award-winning author Melanie Dobson today, and we have some questions that y'all have asked that you did several weeks ago. So she'll be answering some of those. And we will also do a giveaway. So if you comment at least once, you'll be entered in a giveaway. She will be giving away 3 physical copies of 3 of her split time novels, Catching the Wind, Hidden Among the Stars, and of course, her latest release, Memories of Glass, which we are primarily talking about today. She's also giving away an audiobook of your choice of one of those 3. So it's an audible code to redeem for an audiobook today. The other thing is for commenting. So you can comment, hey, that's fine, you're getting entered. But also, we want to try to figure out where everybody is. So please comment what state, what country you are, where you're listening in, tuning in from today. So let me get Melanie on here and we'll get this started. A minute or so. Yeah. So if we like this, we'll try to do these pretty regularly. I think it'll be a lot of fun to talk to these authors we're already talking about. Oh, I see Melanie, so let's give it a time. It's going to sync up for a minute. Oh, she's here already.
I see you.
I
Yay.
see you too.
We did it.
I'm so, we were a bit stressed about it. It's just because technology, and we said that we're going to figure it out, and the next time we try to do this, Facebook's going to change it, so.
Right. We did it. Well done, Morgan.
Yay. Well done, Melanie. We're so glad that y'all are here, and we're going to get started pretty quick. I apologize, it's going to be backwards, but here's the beautiful cover of Melanie's latest release, Memories of Glass, and oh my gosh, I'm still tearing up at the ending. We will not give spoilers today, but if you have not read it, you've got to read it ASAP, as well as Melanie's other books, because they're fantastic. And yeah, this is still staying with me. And I'm just thinking about the characters, and I miss the characters. So,
Aww.
Melanie, thanks for writing such an awesome book that a lot of our group members have already been raving about it. So they're, and if you're tuning in after the live broadcast, we're glad you're here too. Check it out, because this will be recorded on our page, so you can view it later and hear me saying a lot. So Memories of Glass. I'm just going to read the back real quick. They rescued hundreds of children, but she'll never forget those they lost and the ones she had to leave behind. 1942, as war rips to the heart of Holland, childhood friends Josie Von Rees, and I may mess these names up, I'm so sorry. You can correct me, Melanie.
Oh, I wouldn't do any better.
Okay. And Elise Linden partnered with a few daring citizens to rescue Elise's son and hundreds of other Jewish children. But amid their resistance work, Josie and Elise's dangerous secrets could derail their friendship and mission. When the enemy finds these women, only one will escape. Present day, 75 years later. And that's the part where we're just like, ooh, the connection. Ava Drake begins to suspect that her great-grandfather, William Kingston, was not the World War II hero he claimed to be. Her work as director of the prestigious Kingston Family Foundation leads her to Landon West's swoon, by the way, Ugandan coffee plantation. As Landon's great-grandmother shares the broken pieces of her story, Ava must confront the greatest loss of her life and powerful members of the Kingston family who will do anything to keep the truth buried. Illuminating the story and strength of these women, award-winning author Melanie Dobson transports readers through time and place from World War II Holland to contemporary Uganda in this rich and inspiring novel. And doesn't that just draw you in? Oh my gosh. Okay. So thanks for bearing with me to read that. Just for those who may have not read the cover, I wanted to read that, but just so intriguing, grabs you. The first questions from readers, from our group members, readers, was is going to be about the novel itself. So the first one's
Okay.
from Rhonda Ruff. Rhonda Ruff, if
Hey,
you're out
Rhonda.
there, here's your question. What was your favorite part in Memories of Glass, Melanie?
Oh, yeah. So, well, first of all, I
Tough
have to say that
question.
yeah, it is a tough question, but I got all teary writing the ending. So you
Oh
weren't
my
the
gosh,
only
just
one
like
that
I
was
got
teary.
teary reading. And I feel like
Yeah.
if the author's tearing up, she's tapping into something big. So
Oh,
it
I,
just
I cry a
transcends the
lot at my
words.
endings.
But
So
that's
yeah,
the emotion.
fa- my favorite part, and it's hard to pick your very favorite, but I think I was partway through the book when I was writing it, and I always like to have, I call it pixie dust in my stories, for lack of a better word, something kind of magical. And for Catching the
Sparkle.
Wind, yeah,
Yeah.
sparks,
A
exactly.
spark. Yeah.
And for Catching the Wind, it was like I had the knights and the princesses and the fairy tales, and hidden among the stars was my children's literature and the treasure and all of that. And Memories of Glass didn't have that. And I kept praying. I'm like, Lord, I want the pixie dust spark, and praying about it. And I do the story, and I'm not sure exactly what happened, except for that it was the Lord. Or it was just like this. It's glass.
Oh
It's
yeah.
glass. And I went back and I wrote a prologue. And it was one of those beautiful times, or a lot of times when you're writing, it feels like you're just pulling your teeth. Sometimes it's so hard to get on paper. I mean, you know that, Morgan, right? Some of those days are hard.
Yes.
And
I do. Yes.
this prologue just poured out of me with the lights and the glass and this
Wow.
older lady's memories of Holland. And I think that is probably one of my favorite parts of the book, is the beginning. And then, of course, if you read the book, you know what happens, with the glass at the end
Yes.
of the
Which
book as
no
well.
spoilers, like I said.
No
It's
spoilers. I
so
won't
hard
spoil
not to
it.
give spoilers though.
Yeah.
But no, I love that too. And I love too about split time novels that a lot of times in time slip novels, there's a physical symbol in the novel. And I just loved how you
Hmm.
use glass, whole glass, broken glass, just glass throughout the novel. And I
Yeah.
was, of course, with the title itself, you're kind of picking up on the glass stuff as you go through the
Right.
novel. And
Yeah.
it's
As you
just
go
an
through.
extra
Yeah.
special spark, like you said. So that's
Thank
that's
you.
that's an awesome story. And like you said, the spark, you wait for God to bring that spark because
Mm.
you just feel like something's got to come together and he's going to bring it together for you.
Yeah, he's so faithful. Just being
Definitely.
faithful to get it down. He's faithful to give us what we need. Yeah.
Definitely. Next question, because we'll move right along.
Yeah.
Beth Bulow. Okay, I'm sorry, group
Oh,
members, if I mispronounce your
uh,
name because I have not heard it. So forgive me. But Beth Bulow is what I believe it's pronounced. What character do you feel you put most of yourself into in this novel?
yeah. Hi, Beth. You know, I it's hard to say one character because I really put a little bit of myself into all my characters. Um, I think that, well, I should back up a little bit. In this book in
Sure.
particular, I had this question of what would I do? I had learned the story of these three business leaders. It was Henrietta, Johann von Holst, who is still alive, actually 107 years old when I wrote this story,
Wow.
an
Wow.
incredible man. And then Walter Suskind. And the three of them did this incredible thing where they came together secretly and rescued 600 kids, 600 Jewish children from this theater, from this deportation center in Amsterdam. So the story was amazing. They risked their life, and it was just incredible what they did. And so I just started thinking, like, what would I do? What I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I
Yeah.
would know what I would have liked to think I would have
Yeah.
done, right? But I don't know. And so as I wrote this book, it was just me processing that and processing that through my different characters, like how Josie responded, how Elise responded, how everybody responded to the same question, like, what would I do in a pressure situation to rescue somebody who needed it?
Yeah.
And
And
so,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah.
Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
Oh yeah, so yes, a little bit of Josie. Ava I identified with, especially since a few years ago I took my daughter, who had always wanted to go to Uganda, and I was terrified. I was like, Africa. I know you've been, but it was a big step for me. And so we took her over there, and some of that was me, the
Well,
snake and all of
yeah.
that,
The reaction
all
and
of
just
the
the culture.
reactions.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I turned out I loved it. I mean, we had just an incredible time. And I love the Ugandan people. And I wanted to include that in my story. So I guess a little bit of Ava, a little bit of Josie, but I see myself throughout across the characters.
That's awesome. Someone had mentioned putting the link in our actual event group. I'm trying to see if I can do that, so that's why I'm kind of like
Oh yeah,
looking and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Uh, but no, that's great.
I'll
And
look
I
over at my
think, and
computer
as
too.
readers of Time Slip, it's that connection. It's that bringing you along to these new cultures. I feel like into this history that
Yeah.
they don't know anything about, or they think they might know a certain side of it. And especially World War II, like you're saying, we can always ask
Mhm.
ourselves the question of, oh, well, we would do this back then, but you just
Yeah,
putting
you don't
yourself
know.
today, and then your loved ones
Yeah.
or lives are on the lines. It's just such
Hmm.
a hard question, but some of the best stories come out of that question, and God
Right.
answers it in his own way and through the past, through this real story, which I believe one of the questions is about us a little bit behind the true story. But I mean,
Yeah.
just that alone. Let's see. Andrea Johnson, or Andrea, not sure. She said, "Who is your favorite character in one of your books?" And she said, "I love your books." By the
Oh,
way,
thanks, Andrea. Andrea. Yeah. My favorite, oh goodness. Well, I've written 20 of them now. And I've written also, well, I should say I've published 20 of them. I've written three more that haven't seen the light of day. One of my favorite characters was my from my first novel that has not been published. That was Rose.
they
And so she
grab
was
you.
kind
They
of my
just grab
first.
you,
They
right?
do, they grab you. And even though it's not out there yet, of my published novels, I would say maybe Cowley from Hidden Among the Stars. I
Oh
liked
yeah,
her a
okay.
lot.
Hmm.
She was the one that loved children's literature and was always thinking of
Yes,
these lines, from children's literature. I loved her. She was a part owner of a bookstore. And
I
also
wanted to go to
earlier,
that bookstore
yeah,
by the time. Yeah, I feel like I wanted
me
to find
too.
and go to their bookstore. So I love that book as well.
She was a favorite. And then one of my earlier novels was a Love Finds You book. It was in Liberty, Indiana, and I've since republished it as The Runaway. But I have a lady in there, a Quaker lady named Anna, who is helping fugitive slaves run away from the Underground Railroad and through the Underground
Wow.
Railroad. And she was a favorite too. I really liked her spunk. She was a writer, and she was, yeah, having to live two very different lives to keep her work a secret, and I enjoyed her as well.
That's just amazing, and it just
Yeah.
blows your mind that people under that kind of pressure still were able to keep things together, and God held most of
Yeah.
them together. I can't imagine it. And reading in the book, reading Memories of Glass,
Mm,
you put so much emotion and heart into it. We know through the words
mm,
and the story that you just put yourself in that character's shoes. And I think as an
mm.
author, that's what you want people to do, is see themselves in that character some way, and
Yeah.
because you're writing them like that, you see yourself in bits, and they're different
Mm.
favorites for different reasons, right?
Exactly. It's true. And I love writing about, I always say, I like writing about ordinary people who do extraordinary things. And I try and do that
Oh,
throughout my book, kind of like ordinary people, but put in a situation where you have this extraordinary circumstance of confronting evil and having to do something about it. How do you respond? And I love that. I just lost my ear pod. All right,
oh,
I'm
okay.
back in
It's
again.
okay. No,
Hi.
it's cool.
There you
I
go.
think I can't find a way to copy the link. So sorry, everyone, but I'm gonna post really quickly in our event group and just say go to our main group's discussion page, and it's there. So hold on, real quick. Actually,
Yeah.
while I'm doing that, I'll ask you the last
Okay.
question in the
Sounds
novel
good.
section. Jeanette Jackson asked, "Are you working on a book? If so, what is it about?" And I have to go because I know a tiny bit, but I can't wait for you to talk about it because
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
super
yeah.
pumped.
I'm working on two books right now. I am
Ooh,
doing the
too.
edits. Yeah, one is a biblical fiction, which is my first time
Oh,
doing this. It's a
wow.
story
That's
about
awesome.
Tabitha. Yeah, and so I'm really excited about that one. That one's with Guidepost. And then my next time slip story, which is going to come out with Tyndale again in a little over a year. And that one's set in Germany, as you know, Morgan. And that one's about actually, it's about a Nazi archaeologist during from
Ooh,
like
love it.
1938, yeah, to about 1945 in Nuremberg. And so it's a story that's roughly based on a true story, and then I've taken it, and grown it quite a bit from the
That's what we
basics.
do. It's the spark,
It's
the
yeah, it's the
sparks.
spark. Yeah. So I got this little spark and then it's grown quite a bit. But it's a story I'm enjoying. I'm about a third of the way through it and it's hard. The middles are hard to write. You have those messy middles, I call it. Somebody
Yes.
called it a muddle the other day. That's what I feel. So I'm right in the middle of my muddle. But once I get my poor characters out of these horrible situations, I will be feeling much better about it.
I'm sure. That's awesome. Let's see. Great answers, Melanie. Appreciate that. Those are awesome. And
Ah, sure.
it's so cool to talk to you, about the
Yeah.
things that we've read about,
Yeah.
Someone had commented, I'm gonna look through the comments in a minute, but
Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
Deidre Lake said the split time novels are wonderful as I have learned so much of history from them. And I say
Mm,
definitely. And I think some
mm,
of the coolest thing is when authors find the tidbits, the sparks of history that have been buried
mm,
down. Just like in
mm,
your story, I'm not giving anything away when I say there are parts of
mm,
history in Melanie's novel that the world has tried to hide in some ways, and some people have. And I think
mm.
the secrets, secrets that people want to stay buried. And I think that
Yeah.
taps into it when you're learning about things that have been hidden, that have been concealed, or that have just been lost in the pages of history.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I was just in Germany a couple of months ago in August. I was there researching, for this novel. And
Awesome.
I was getting together with a German friend of mine and just talking to her, and she was in her 70s. And she was just telling me how her parents lived through Nazi Germany and they had
Oh
quite the
wow, yeah.
story of their own. Yeah. But she just said, they never talked about it. They wouldn't talk about it. And there's a whole lot of reasons. But these stories, it's hard, it's hard to talk about them. And hence, all these secrets, all these years later that we write about, because so much of it has been hidden away.
It's true. I have a friend who is German. His family
Mm,
is in Bavarian, which is the southernmost state of Germany. If you're not familiar with
mm,
Germany, everyone, but I even from the generation, millennial generation, which we both are in, I was still hesitant to ask him about it because his family
mm,
is
yeah.
German. They're German and not Jewish at all that I know of. So just ask him, and we're good friends. I was like, you know, what about your family's past?
Mm,
Where were they during World War II? Do you mind if I ask you? And he was like, no, I don't. But I was real hesitant because it's
yeah,
and
it's
it's
hard.
something that so many generations were ashamed of, and you understand, but it was not
Hmm.
something they did. It was their ancestors, their family
Hmm.
members, and it's just and that's part of one of the struggles in your book that your characters are
Hmm.
dealing with is legacy of
Yeah, legacy.
dark
Hmm.
secret legacies and past. And I think that's so important because we all can relate something in our past, maybe with our parents or
Hmm.
our grandparents or something that happened in our family we don't understand because we might have been really small. So that's
Right.
always intriguing. Our next questions are in what I
Yeah.
call the research topic.
Okay.
Sarah Monzin said,
Yeah.
she asked, what is the most interesting tidbit you've come across in your research? Oh, that's a tough question. I know.
Oh.
Woo!
Oh,
So
I
let's
come
just
across
pick
great.
one for, I
Okay.
guess for this, like for this novel, we'll say for
For this
Memories of
novel. Okay.
Glass. Yeah.
That sounds good. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, you always are finding those little tidbits, right, as you
The
go.
nuggets,
The
the nuggets.
nuggets. Yeah, you're like, wow, I never knew this, and a lot of times other people haven't either. I think with Memories of Glass, one of those nuggets that I found was actually the whole book started long before I even knew about the deportation center in Amsterdam.
Wow.
A friend of mine had been in Holland, in the Netherlands. There, they just call it all Holland. So she'd been in Holland, had been down at the very tip Maastricht, which if you read the book, you know about that now.
Hmm.
But she'd been in Maastricht and she said, the Holland is very flat until you get down to the south. And there's all these little holes, little
Wow.
caverns, little caves all over the place in these hills. And she was like, something must have happened there. And so I started researching and looking into it. And yeah, something did happen there, right? And
Hmm.
so when I was there, I was able to go into these caverns And their tunnels, their mines, there's 8,000 about of them. Once it was the largest
Wow.
labyrinth in the world. Yeah, incredible. They're marlstone mines. And
Wow.
so being down there, but one thing that I found, and I think I just mentioned it in the book, but they had a whole city down there just, waiting for when the bombs happened for the city to be
Hmm.
able to go under. They had stoves and places for people to live and all of that. But the Dutch in particular hid the artwork. All their Dutch
You did
masterpieces
mention that in the
from
novel.
Amsterdam.
Yes.
Yeah. So they
Wow.
had it all down there. It was safe, it was secure. But the crazy thing about it, in my opinion, was that the Germans knew where it was. They knew where all this art, where it wasn't hiding necessarily. They were storing
Yeah.
it, and the
They're
Nazis were
just
just
letting it
waiting.
collect.
They're letting it collect. So when the war was over, that the Nazis could just go in, grab collection, take it home. So it wasn't hidden necessarily, right? It
Yeah.
was just stored away. But a lot of people did use those tunnels. It was hard to get around. I mean, people died down there just getting lost, right?
I can
So
that
people
I was
did
feeling a
use
little
those tunnels.
claustrophobic when I was reading that scene. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, like, yeah.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. Just you had to know what you were doing to get in and get out of there safely, especially to get over to Belgium, right? And get off and
Hmm.
back to safety. Yeah. But that was one of the many. There were so many that were intriguing to me. I find, I'm intrigued
Well,
by
yes.
everything.
Well, and I'm
So,
sure if you're in that city, you don't realize unless you're told that there's all this stuff
yeah.
underneath you. Like
Oh
that's just
yeah,
mind-blowingly amazing to think about.
it
And
is.
and like you said, they had to have a guide because you mentioned in your novel that they had to
Hmm.
have a guide to lead them to a certain point because it was
Yes.
they could be lost and not seen
It
again.
cannot survive. Yep. Hmm.
Wow. Well, great question, Sarah. Next question is by Velma Hunsucker. Hopefully, I got the pronunciations right, y'all.
Hi,
Sorry.
Thelma.
How do you go about doing your research? Do you visit the settings of your novels? And you've already said you went to Germany, so
Yeah.
yay!
Yeah, I'm a collector, kind of a curator, I guess, of materials. And so every single book is inspired a little bit differently. Some are inspired by very personal stories. Chateau of Secrets, if you read that, with the French
Mhm.
chateau,
I did, yeah.
the castle. Yeah, so that was completely inspired by a true story. I mean, I went to the
Wow.
chateau, I visited, I saw the tunnel, all of that. Some are things I get little tidbits online I learn about, or, something else happens. Catching the Wind was completely my imagination. That one, there's a long story behind that one, which I won't go into right now. But yeah,
Maybe
so everyone,
another time,
another
maybe.
time, we'll do that one another time. Everyone is inspired by something a little bit different. That being said, once I figure out sort of what I want to do, I go online. Online is a great place to research. I start doing research there.
Hmm.
I don't stop online. I go offline. I have an awesome library who can get me pretty much any book that I want. I've gotten
Yay,
rare, old,
libraries!
yeah, yay,
Yay!
library. Yeah, I have an amazing library. I've told them, I'm like, I couldn't write without you guys because you guys can get me anything, and they're amazing. And so I read a lot of, first person accounts,
Hmm.
journals, books,
Hmm.
contemporary books about the past,
Hmm.
that sort of thing. I do for this one. I was so blessed because I was able to do interviews. I mean, a lot of
Oh
these
my
stories you can't interview for the
gosh!
history. Yeah. So
Wow!
I was able, there was a 95-year-old woman, great, in
Oh
great
my
health, that
gosh!
I was able to meet with here in Portland. I live in Portland, Oregon. She welcomed me and told me her story because she remembers it very clearly what happened during the war. And so Nell was her name. She was a dear. So I was able to do some, first person
That's
interviews, which is
huge.
incredible.
Like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And
Wow.
then absolutely. And then I have to go to the setting in order for me to write. I
Hmm.
think it's so important in a novel to have really great sensory information. So the smells, the sounds, the tastes, what do the
Yeah.
pastries taste like in the Netherlands?
Oh, that's tough, Melanie. That's a
It's
tough
it's a tough
job.
job. I know it's hard. It's a sacrifice. The coffee
Eat
tasting I
those
had to do for this
pastries.
novel.
Eat
I
those
know
pastries and drink the
exactly.
coffee.
Exactly. So it was hard, but I went all the major settings in that book. I actually visited and was able to, like in Geethorn on the eastern side, right
Oh,
on
the
the German
canals.
border.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness, that town. I mean, it was. I don't even think I did justice in the book. It was just so picturesque, and taking the canal, the boats on the canals, and just seeing all those little islands where all those
Oh,
cottages were, and
you
the
did great.
flowers.
You did great
Oh,
painting a
good.
picture with your words. And then what we do is to find more information, we Google it. I Googled this
Oh,
because I
there you
never heard
go.
of unicorns.
You've
So I
seen it.
Googled it and I was seeing pictures and I was reading your book and going, this is it. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm here.
it's a
I'm
real
here. So,
place. It still looks pretty much the same as it would have back in 1940. Yeah. So so great question. But I kind of do the whole thing.
that's all. The last research questions from Carol John during historical research. Can you hear us? The sound changed a little bit. Can you hear me okay? Oh, I think we're frozen up. We're going to give it a minute and see if we can. Oh, are we back?
All right. I'm back.
Are we back?
Yeah, but
Are we back?
we're back, but my earbuds aren't working. So I'm going to put you on old fashioned.
Well, like me, join me.
Well, like me, join me.
Yes.
So that way, yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if our audio is really
I don't know if our audio is really messed up. I hear myself.
I'm going to see if, okay, I don't hear myself. It was like I was hearing myself echo, which is scary. It sounded really scary on my end.
Okay, can you hear me, Morgan?
I can hear you.
Okay, you're frozen, but I can hear you. You're frozen in time.
Well, let's just go with it. And then, we have a backup plan for this, everybody. So we have a backup plan.
Okay.
We'll just keep going with it. If you can hear me, you don't have to see my face moving. I hope it's not frozen.
You look lovely.
Oh, thanks. Okay, so Carol Johnson asked, what's your favorite method or formula for gathering your historical research? Do you have certain physical way you gather it, some of the things you write maybe? A lot of authors use anything from note cards to binders to Scrivener, so.
Yes, I do. I use Scrivener as well. It's super helpful for me just to be able to gather all my research and put it into one place. I've got everything really neat, really neat and organized on there, because if I don't, my mind is as messy as my middles. Sometimes it's hard to keep it all straight, And I've got piles. If I scan my office, you would see my piles of books, because I've got the piles of books and all of that. When I go on my research trips, I just take notes on my phone. I don't want to miss anything. So I'm constantly, observing and taking notes and doing all of that.
Are you taking pictures on your phone?
I took 1,000 pictures, I think. A little bit of video. Most of the video that I take is more for the sound, because I don't want to forget what's, this waterfall or something sound like.
Bells, European church bells.
Yes. I did. And when I was there, the glockenspiel, they had it in the churches where it was going in a circle and trumpeting and all that. I took video of that. And for Memories of Glass, I did the water wheels, I just wanted to remember what that sound, the water slapping, and all of that is so important, for the end result, to be able to put that in the book. So I can remember, but also so I can hopefully communicate those sounds and stuff to my readers.
That's awesome. We have a question. We'll go ahead and answer. That's a really good one. Deidre Lake says, the history that you brought forth in your writing, why do you think these obscure details have not been made known to us by historians or the media?
Yeah, something, that is a really good question.
It is.
I'm not entirely sure. The thing with this story and Memories of Glass in particular is that it's really cool, actually. A lot of people in the Netherlands haven't even heard the story. And so, so what's happened is a Dutch publisher has picked it up, and of course they verified it and all of that. And they're republishing it in Dutch because they think it's such an important story. I know, I was so honored when I found that out. I was like, oh, it's so cool that they're going to be telling, having this story over there. That comes out in January. They renamed it, in Dutch, it's A Room with Light, A Room with the Lights, I think is what it was called in Dutch. Yeah.
That's a good title too.
I won't try and say it in Dutch. Yeah. Okay. So I think A Room with Lights, I think. Yeah. So anyway, so that was really cool. I don't know. If you look up Johann von Holst, who passed away right before the book came out, he passed away about a year ago. You can see a little bit of the story just in his obituary, but as far as it being a widely known story, I don't know why. I don't know why these stories aren't, but I'm
Well,
thrilled to be able to tell them.
yeah, and I think too, like we said, when you're looking up history like that, especially from that time period, there were so many people that didn't want to remember it. Not that they did
Yeah,
anything.
it's true.
They may be heroic and they didn't want to share, so nobody would know because they killed everybody else. Everybody in the whole, like,
Hmm.
a network or their whole circle that helped do these things were they were the last ones. And so it just didn't pass on like that. And
Yeah.
it's just there's so many of these stories that are still coming, emerging from World War II era that are just
Yes.
there'll be more. There'll be way more to come.
There'll be more because
Ruth
they're just
Ruth.
now getting.
Let's see. Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead. Sorry. No, I was just gonna
well, they're
say Ruth
just
said
now.
no
Yeah.
sound. So can you hear us, Ruth? Please comment if you can. Sorry, continue, Melanie. Continue, please.
Yeah. So they're just now, like you said, Arlson. Oh, what do they call it? It's in Arlson. It's a town in Germany where they're just now putting a lot of their records online and getting them out there.
Okay.
So it's all this new information that continues to come out, which is amazing to me that the stories, are still
From
being
that long
told.
ago.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
even with Memories of Glass, I mean, the stories of the American investors who were investing in Nazi Germany, I had no idea. I mean, that was new to me. I hadn't learned that before. And
Oh
so that
yeah.
was all based on fact as well.
And there's so much that you just can't cover in World War II. I mean, not this is just the
Yeah.
European theater. We're not even getting into the Pacific.
Oh, right,
So
exactly. Yeah, there's so much.
and it's just so intriguing because, like you're saying, people there's stories are still being released in the
Hmm.
news, some and through fiction, and it's just awesome.
Yeah.
I love World War II fiction is my favorite. It's just
Hmm.
it has a special place in my heart, that time period and the stories and the courage and the faith and that came out of that.
Yeah.
It's just
Well, and
inspiring.
people keep wanting to hear the stories. So, I'm very blessed and grateful to be able to keep telling them.
Awesome. Well, keep telling them where we left off.
Thanks, you
Um,
too.
well, we'll keep going. Yeah, let us know if you can hear us okay. We can hear on our end and we can see each other. So we're going to keep going. This next section is for questions about time slip or split time. And as we've talked
Okay.
in our group, there's a lot of people call it different names, but we know it's all the same genre, the same style. So Melanie is time slip. So this is a question from Perry Ann Askew. I hope
Oh,
that's
hi,
how you say her
Karen. Yeah,
name.
I know
Okay,
you.
Perry Ann.
Hi.
Okay, great. How do you write your time split novels as two different stories and then meld them together, or in the exact order
Hmm.
they're written in?
You know something? I have tried to do two different stories, and some of my author friends do it that way. I have not been able to do that because my stories are so woven together. Something that happens in the past influences the future,
The
what they're
next
looking
chapter,
for.
right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then they'll find something, in the present chapter that then I do the backstory to explain in the past what happened. And so my books are written back and forth like that, sort of woven together. However, my first draft looks nothing like, what's actually sent out to the readers at the end because I have to clean up a lot to make
It's
sure that it
understandable.
flows. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
understandable. And that one chapter moves moving into the next chapter and as smooth as I can make it. So there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of editing and tweaking to make it all work out. It's probably would be easier to write one full story and one, full story. It's just for my process, I have to process it in such a way as I hope the reader does as well, the back and
Yeah, and
forth.
as we've talked
Yeah,
about on here too, is this style is so experimental. You can write it
it
however,
is.
and there's plenty of
Yeah.
novels that are heavier to one side. There's a novel I love that's both too historical. So it's just and with the writing
Hmm.
too is experimental. Some authors may write it
Yeah.
one style and the next another style and just see what works for you. And so finding out, your the way your flow with your writing and the style, is, I think, the key. That's awesome.
Absolutely. And I love it.
So,
I love that it's so, experimental and at the beginning, so we can kind of play with
yes.
it and make it our own. I have to tell you, I had one reader that told me that it was Catching the Wind that she read. And when she reads Time Slip, she goes through and she reads all the history chapters first. And then she goes back and reads all the present. So she
I
actually
know
reads them
who
as two
that
different
is.
novels. That's funny.
She's a group member. I'm pretty sure, because I had never heard of someone reading it like that, and she said, and I was like, wow, that is so cool. I mean,
I love it.
even the reading of a
Yeah.
time slip novel is experimental. So this is
It's
awesome.
different. Yeah.
Let's see, Stacy Yulferts. I'm sorry, Stacey, if I didn't pronounce your name. She says, my daughter is living in northern Germany right now for a year, so these stories are extra memorable. That's awesome.
Oh, that's cool.
That's
Yes.
really
What
cool.
an amazing experience to be living
Especially
there.
being so young and doing that. I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't get on a plane for the first time until I was almost 20, and then I went
Oh my
a bunch of
goodness.
places. So that's awesome.
You
Hey,
saw the
everybody! I see
world.
some more people popping up. Yes, and that Melanie said, I've been blessed to be in certain countries that my future novels that I'm writing are set in, because it's just
Mm,
being able to have the blessing to go and experience and tap into your novel for a writer is just awesome. So we're
it
so glad that you
is.
got to
Yeah.
go to these places and share them through your words with
Mm,
us and put us there, even if we're not
mm.
traveling there. It's a armchair type of adventure, but we
You
get
get to go
a
with me.
travel adventure. Exactly. Let's see. We'll go to our next question from Beth Foreman. Please share the story of how you decided to write time slip stories.
Oh, time slip stories altogether.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the style.
I don't know exactly how, like very beginning, how I was inspired, but my very first novel that I tried to write back in like 1998 um, ended up being a time slip, the back and forth,
Wow. Mm-hmm.
because I mean, it was not a good first draft, but to put it mildly, but I just like these back and forth stories, and I'm not sure if Francine Rivers novel. Oh, what was it called? Oh, The Scarlet Thread. I bet that
Okay,
came
yeah.
out right around that time,
It
right?
should have. Yeah, I think so.
And Robin Hatcher had one as well. And so I probably read one of them and was like, oh, this is really cool. I like this style. I love knowing, like writing stories about secrets, like you said, that happened in the past. And so being able to show those accounts in a first person way, in a contemporary way, even though it's past, I really liked that. I liked doing that. Then I wrote a couple of novels. It took me, it's a long story, but it took me 7 years when I started writing fiction until when I was actually able to publish fiction. It was a whole lot of trial and error for
And
me.
that's a total usual story. So
That's what
yeah,
I'm
it just
told.
takes a
Yeah, in
while. Oh yeah, it just
hindsight.
takes a while.
It
Yeah.
took me a while. And nobody was buying historical, at least new historical, when I first started. So I started writing some contemporary books for my first novels. But my contemporary stories were all based on things that happened in the past. So
Of
it's just kind of
course.
like natural. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then oh gosh, I would say about 10 years ago, maybe not quite that long, I read Sarah's Key. Have you read that,
Yes,
Morgan?
I
Yeah.
have read
Okay.
it. That was one of the first split times I read Tatiana de Rosnay. Rosnay, yes.
Yes,
Hmm.
exactly. I read that story and I was like, this is what I want to do.
Yes.
That is the vision for my career from here on
Hmm.
out, is being able to
Yeah.
write these past present stories that are so meaningful. Oh my goodness. I mean, I was so inspired by her book and my heart was in it, right? I mean, my emotions were in
Yeah, it just
it. It
grabs you.
grabs you from the first page and it doesn't let you go. And so when I read that book, I was like, this is what I want to be. Yeah, this is what I want to do. And so I wrote Chateau Secrets pretty soon after that. And thankfully, Howard published it and I've been doing that sort of genre ever since.
Yay!
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
that's awesome. And I think too, even, I mean, coming from a background, if you love history or you don't love history, I think everyone to an extent
Mm,
can appreciate how the spark from the past can connect and impact the present day. I
yeah,
mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
even if it's just you walking into a museum and you looking at displays and
Hmm.
you just something sparks you, that's in essence what holds up this type of style, I think. It's just that spark
Hmm.
and that what grabs you, because it really happened and it's still relevant
Yeah,
today. It's still relevant to our lives today.
absolutely. It's relevant and it impacts our lives today. And a lot of, in a lot of these stories, that's what I like. It's like, how does the past change our life? How can
Mhm.
it change our life today? And how does it
Yeah.
change our life today? And that's what I love about this genre is being able to look at that, thinking that something's brand new and no, it's really inspired or
Mhm.
instigated by something that happened 60, 70, 100 years
Yeah,
ago,
and it's
Yeah.
not that we're not already doing that, reading straight historicals or even straight contemporaries, but it's just
Mhm.
it's that spark within our reader mind, but in a written form, on
Yeah.
paper. And I saw, because I even
Mhm.
obviously reading a contemporary or historical contemporary novel, you still have those sparks where you're going,
Mhm.
you're connecting to something in your
Mhm.
own past or something you've read. So it's just cool that
Yeah.
it comes together within a full story within our hands or in our ears, audiobooks. So
Yeah.
we're doing good on time at the moment, but Deidre Lake, you're having some awesome questions. Here's a question: what novel would you like to see made into a movie, Melanie? Ooh, good
Oh,
question.
one of my
Fun.
novels or somebody
Yeah,
else's novel?
your novels.
One of
Yeah.
my novels. Ooh, nobody's ever asked me that question, Deidre.
Ooh, good job. Good job, Deidre.
Let me think. Which novel? Something I would love for any of my novels to be made into
Oh
movies. So I'm
yeah,
not
definitely.
particular, you know what I mean? Just pick anyone. I think Chateau of Secrets would make a neat movie, but I have to tell you that Shadows of Lanebrook Manor, which was one I wrote 6 or 7 books ago, I
I've read
guess.
that one too.
Did you
Yeah.
read that
Hmm.
one? That was the story of my heart. I mean, I just poured
Aw.
myself into that book. And
Hmm.
Lily, the artist character in that book, I would love to see that one made into a movie. Catching the Wind is another one that I would love to see made into a movie. They don't make a lot of historicals and time slip, from that
Yeah.
period into movies. So who knows if it would ever happen, but
Well,
I'd
I
be
think
honored.
yeah. I think
Yeah,
any of yours, yeah, I think any of yours would be great. But that's a great question, and I think,
it
and I
is.
do love. I feel like in film, real quick, we'll segue for tiny bit. I feel like a lot of times they might. You take the movie Titanic. They have a tiny bit of contemporary in the
Hmm.
beginning, which launches the past,
Yes.
and then it ends with that. So a lot of times it's sandwiched.
Hmm.
It's this sandwich
Yes.
kind of effect, which that may be what they would try to do, and you just can't.
Hmm.
You got to have the two stories in these novels, and so that may be the one
Hmm.
of the reasons why not well, time slip, split time novels are not turned into movies more often, but we want them to.
Yeah,
So if you're listening,
absolutely.
Hollywood or whatever, give us
Please.
some time slip movies from the novels. Yeah. Okay, we have a few more questions, and
Okay.
we're press on. This is the last style genre question from Joseph Ryan. How do you
Okay.
make the transition between times feel less abrupt when you're writing, and how do you make it flow? Is
Mm,
there anything that you keep in mind or do
that, that's
technique wise?
that's a great question, Joseph. Yes, there are things that I've learned how to do. One thing, a little trick that I try to do when I write is that sometimes, not every chapter, but I'll have something it doesn't matter if it's past or present, but say I have a cat, I did that in Hidden Among the Stars. I had a cat. The chapter ends up with my main guy character, my protagonist, my hero. He's with this cat. And then the next chapter, it's Callie in the bookshop with her cat. So I have something that's
Oh, I
in
love that.
common.
Hmm.
Yeah, something, whatever that looks like for the story, but I'll have something in common for both the past and the present chapters to kind of transition into that. Another thing that I do is if you say you're in the present and you're trying to find something that happened in the past, then the next chapter I will flow it right into whatever the
Okay.
character in the present is trying
They
to
find.
find. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it shows it then. So they don't have to tell it. It shows what
And
happened.
and we
And
love
then you go
that, I think, as
back.
readers,
Yeah.
yeah, because because you're like, or they can't find something yet, and then
Yeah.
the reader gets to know we're like at the behind the scenes,
Hmm.
like, ooh, we know.
Yes.
We love that though.
Yeah, I love that. And then the reader, yeah, the characters don't find out about it until
Yeah,
later. That's definitely another tactic. But those are two things that I do to try and, weave it together so
that's
it's
awesome.
not so jarring. I have asked my publisher and they've done a really good job. I do like having even like visually at the beginning of the chapters, being able to show if it's past or present, just so readers have a quick, they look and they go, oh, okay, I'm in
Yeah,
whatever,
I really,
1940.
well,
Oh,
I
I'm in
really
the present,
I liked what they did in your book, and Members of Glass, because the past chapters have this pretty
Mm-hmm.
scroll work and stuff, which was nice
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times, it is marked obviously where it is in the time period, but it was nice that only the past had this pretty little scroll. It
Yeah.
was just, that was a nice touch I hadn't seen in some novels. So way to go.
Yeah. So, instantly where you are. Yeah. I
Yes.
was thrilled they did that. Yeah.
Yeah. Way to go, Tyndale. Let's see. Okay, the next section, just 4 more questions. And if you have any other questions, we'll try to get to them if we have time. So go ahead and post them. This is on writing. Josie
Okay.
Sealer. Sorry, Josie.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Hi,
not
Josie.
sure
I
how
know
to say your
Josie.
last name. Well, awesome. And Josie's one of the character names, so we know that Josie too.
Yes.
Oh, this is a hard question, Melanie. Who is your
Okay.
favorite writer?
Oh.
Mm.
Oh goodness. I'm gonna
Just name
I
5,
have a
maybe.
lot.
Maybe five.
I have a
Five.
lot. So, well, I'll name one that I don't know personally. How's that?
Sure. Whatever you want to do to
Because I
answer the
love
question.
every writer that I know. Yeah. No, I do like Kate Morton a
Oh
lot.
my gosh.
Yeah, she's one of my faves.
Oh yeah.
I love her time slip. I love how she does this houses, right, in England, and the
Yeah.
stories that she tells. Does time slip different than I tell it, so it's fun because I can kind of escape into her writing, and I'm not like critiquing,
Yeah. Critiquing.
like, oh, would I do it like that, because
Yes.
it's different than how I write time slip. But I do really, really enjoy getting kind of lost in her stories.
Oh yeah. She's fantastic, and like you said, I've read all her books, and they're fantastic. But she's all done them all a little differently. So she
Mm-hmm.
takes this genre and does a whole new spin on it. But her
Yeah.
prose is beautiful, and so is yours, Melanie. So I
Oh,
mean,
thank you.
just
Thank
reading
you.
Memories of Glass, I was just like, because being a reader and a writer, just the words, the physical
Mm,
words, seeing them just means so much when you're reading it too, and so it's
mm.
like just to read and realize the words are art and prose, and so you did a
Mm.
great job just
Oh,
with the
thanks. I
writing, with the
love
style of
trying
the
to do
writing
that.
too. It's
Yeah.
beautiful, and Kate does that, and she's and
Mm-hmm.
I think too she's like you, where y'all try to find these sparks of history, and it might be a house, and it might be a ring, or it might be a index card or something. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever
Yeah. Yeah.
historically is gonna be that spark. So that she's a great one. We definitely talk about some of her novels in our group. So great answer. Next question is by Veronica Sternberg. What did you when did you decide you wanted to be a writer?
Hmm. I think I was born with a pen in my hand. See, I like carry them around with me everywhere. You never know, right?
Yes.
Um, yeah, I literally have always loved to write. I think my dad gave me a little journal when I was about 7 years old, and I started keeping just my little, very intriguing diary of,
Oh yes.
today I had grape nuts for breakfast, or what, you know what I mean? Like,
Oh
today I
yes.
went to grandma and grandpa's
I
house.
have that too.
Do you have
I have one
those?
of those.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I've just always loved to write. I love to read as well, which I think is pretty typical for writers. I used to go to the book. We lived in the middle of nowhere. We lived in Ohio growing up in kind of Amish country, and no
Oh wow.
library, no bookstore nearby. I mean, we were really remote in the farmlands. But I had a bookmobile that would come
We
once a
did
week to about
too.
a mile.
I
Did you
love,
too?
yay,
Yeah.
bookmobile. Yes,
Oh,
yes,
but
yes.
bookmobile was my favorite. I would get on my bike and like pedal right over there and like fill it up. The librarian would just like she'd have new stuff every week. And I'd fill up my basket and I would ride home and I would just read and read and read and read. And so I just love to read. And then I would just write down, my thoughts, my kind of like life
Mhm.
thoughts. And then just started thinking up stories around middle school. I'd be like, oh, this is cool. And usually they were mysteries with, character sort of named, like Nancy Brew,
I'm
really,
about to say
creative
Nancy
name.
Drew.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
course. They're all like mysteries. But,
You
but
gotta love Nancy Drew with Love Mystery
oh,
as a middle
I,
grader.
I
So
loved them. Yeah.
me too.
Um, and I never finished the stories. Like I would get to the middle section and be like, I don't know what to do now, right?
It
And so
still
I
gets
just
us.
would
The
quit the
muddle still gets
middles, the
us.
muddles. Yeah, they're still hard. They still are. And so I put aside the dream to write fiction for years and years. And it wasn't till a little bit before my 30th birthday, I got married, and my husband was like, I was writing articles, I was doing all sorts of writing, but not
Yeah.
fiction.
Yeah.
And my husband was like, if you want to do this dream, it's time. Like, you've got to
Well,
start
and I'll
doing
interject
this.
here
Yeah.
because in the middle of that, she was a journalist. You went from
Yes.
journalism to like publicist type public
Uh-huh.
relations, right? So you were still
Right.
writing and all this. It was just different forms. And I'm a journalist
Just a
as
different
well. And so,
form.
and
Hmm.
you still had those questions, those story questions, those interesting tidbits from interviews and stuff. You were still
Hmm.
writing. You were still
Yes,
doing
I've
it.
never stopped writing. I was journaling
You
and
still
all
had
sorts of
your
stuff.
pen
I still had
going.
my pen always. Yeah. But I would write these journalism stories, articles for the
Yeah.
newspaper, and I was always wanting to add something. I was like, it would be so much better if this
Oh
happened
my
or this got,
gosh,
you
yes.
can't do that, of course, in
Yes.
journalism.
My
Yeah.
professors told me like several times, like, your writing's too flowery. And I'm like, but I like it. So yeah, but
Yeah.
it has to be
Yeah.
true.
It has to be true when you're doing journalism, but not with fiction.
Not, yes,
That's
exactly.
the
And you're
fun
just
of it,
going,
right?
well, looky here, I can write fiction now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too
I
funny.
can base it
But
on a true story, but I can keep on,
and
make
you can
it.
do your research and ask
Yeah.
your questions, and no,
Hmm.
that's awesome. Great question. We have two more
Hmm.
questions.
All
Cindy
right.
Pye asked, was there someone who inspired you to become a writer, or did you just
Mm,
know you wanted to write? So you just kind of talked about obviously wanting to write, but was there someone or maybe more than
yeah.
one person inspired you?
I think I was inspired really early on by a book. I had read that Emily Climb's book by Lucy Montgomery. And if you
Okay.
haven't read that book, I read it, I was probably like 11 or 12 when I read it. And it was about this young lady, probably about my age, who wanted to be a writer when she grew up. And she was just pouring herself into her writing. I was like, oh, I'm Emily. Finally, somebody
Yes.
else gets it, right? My
You
soul
were
sister.
relating. You're relating
I
to
was
her.
relating.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, she gets it. And I found out, years later that those books were actually based off of Lucy's journals when she was
Oh,
a girl. Yeah,
wow.
so she was like
Okay.
using all that emotion. And Lucy Montgomery went on to do Anne of Green Gables and
Yes.
some other
Mm-hmm.
big novels. Yeah, but that
Mm-hmm.
Emily Klein's book, I related to that. And then I also had a teacher in ninth grade. Actually, I had her for 3 years, ninth, 10th, and 11th grade,
Oh, wow.
and she recognized my desire to write. And so she made me she made me keep a journal, like a consistent daily journal, where I had to write every single day. I don't know that she had anybody else in the class do that except for me, but she had me do it, and it got me into this regular
Mm-hmm.
rhythm of writing and not being afraid of it, because I
And
had no idea what the next day. And
confidence and stuff. That was,
confident,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Exactly, kind of stream of consciousness sometimes, just kind of putting out there my feelings or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But she helped me take out the fear of writing, which was really a big deal for me. So yeah, between Miss Steinbach and Emily Climbs, I think those were my two big inspirations.
That's awesome. And sometimes it just takes that one person to even just say,
Yeah,
you're you can do this.
you can
You're
do it.
yeah,
Yeah, you've
just
got what
and
it
so
takes. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, so that's awesome. So thank you to
Hmm.
her and
Yeah.
for doing that for you all those years ago. That was awesome.
Oh yeah, I'm very grateful.
And that confidence, especially from a young age, confidence to do whatever you're passionate about is huge. And I mean
Hmm.
that's awesome. Oh yeah, our
Yeah.
last question
Okay.
that are written is from Stacy Yulfert. I'm sorry, I said if I'm saying your name wrong. Where and when do you do most of your writing?
Hmm.
Good question.
I never really stop writing. I mean, most of it's going up in here, right? But I'm always like thinking of the next thing, which is really annoying to live with. It's like I'll be like all quiet, like doing the dishes, and my husband will come up
Oh
with a
my
question. I'm like,
gosh.
honey, I'm in the middle of a conversation.
This
He's
is
like,
my
there's
life
nobody
too. I
around.
totally get it. Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh,
but you don't
yes.
understand. They're talking to me, right?
I'm
Um,
listening.
Listen, I know exactly. Like, hush, I know
Yeah.
there's nobody here, but I'm working. So yes, there's all sorts of interesting conversations, but I love to write actually at coffee shops. It's really good for me to get out of my house and get to a different place. I get really distracted at home, actually, which sounds really weird, I guess, but I'm like, oh, I just need to throw in a little laundry or just do this or that. And before I know it, I haven't written what I want to write for the day. And so I can go to the coffee shop and just kind of settle in. We've got a great little coffee shop where I live in my little town, and I can go in and get my green tea and just sit and write and write. So I do it there. I still write at home. I write in the car. I write when I'm waiting for my kids and their activities at school. Um, and usually at least one time during the book, next weekend, I'm going away for the weekend. So I'll find an inexpensive hotel someplace and I just kind of lock myself in for the
Like a writing
weekend.
cave, kind of like a writing cave
It
kind of
is.
thing.
It's like a writing cave, and I have to go away to do it. And it just works out really well for me. I can go
Yeah.
and I can get
Focus.
10 to
You can
15,000
focus.
words. Yeah,
Wow.
I can just spill and pour out and just get a ton of work done. And so that for me is really helpful, especially if I'm in a spot like my middles, that's really
Oh
hard
yeah.
to get through. Yeah.
That's awesome. And the split time author Susanna Kearsley, she's Canadian. She does that.
Hmm.
She calls it her like writing stays or something. She goes to a
Oh, good.
hotel and she orders room service. She puts a do not disturb sign and she gets focused like you're saying. So that's awesome.
Yeah, just you completely, especially when you're writing historical fiction, I think it's
Mhm.
really hard. Like once you're in the 19 whatevers or 18 or
Yeah.
17 whatevers, you're in a different place and it's really
Yeah.
jarring to get out of that,
And you don't need to
I,
walk across streets or drive or
yes, it takes you
distraction
out of
sometimes.
it or have the phone ring or whatever.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
I remember I forget which book it was that I was writing, but it was 1800s. It may have been The Runaway, the Underground Railroad book. And I remember coming home after writing probably at the coffee shop and being like, okay, what am I going to make on the hearth tonight? You know what I mean? Like I was literally trying to process what I was going to cook on the
Build the
hearth
fire and
and
stoke the
build a
fire.
fire,
Oh,
get
that's
my
awesome.
pot. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, wait a second. I have a microwave.
Well, and I
So,
think, and
yeah.
you've got to be in that. You've got to be so in it that you're literally either an actor in a film playing that, or you're in a,
Yeah.
or you're in that. You imagine yourself being that
Mhm.
character. And so, like you said, that's the perfect example. And then you're
You're
asking your
you're
husband,
there.
did you slaughter the pig or something?
Exactly. He's like, you're scaring me, honey.
It's like, you
Yeah.
married it. You married a writer. So sorry. My husband's the same way. I'm like, especially when I go, oh honey, I gotta tell you about this, and he knows. Oh gosh, and I said I'll keep it short. I promise. You know.
Yeah. Or you
Well,
say, honey, I need to kill somebody. And they're
oh
like,
my
oh
god.
my goodness, I'm worried. But it has to be
Or
really
my, or
creative.
you ask him. So okay, let me tell you this. So if you were in this situation, what would your reaction be? You know, he loves when I ask
Yeah.
him that one. I mean, our poor husband. Our husbands definitely have to have big praise for putting up with like trying to kill people and trying to hide things and find things and
Yeah.
use a gun. You never know what's going to come up in novels.
You
So
never know. It's
that's
not dull. Let's just
awesome.
put it that way, right?
Oh,
Living
it's
with
not.
us.
And I think that's what's
It's,
so cool is because it's always exciting. There's always new characters talking in your head. You know, there's
yeah.
always new facts to uncover and those sparks and those nuggets. And I think, and that's just so fascinating as readers, us getting to read how authors bring that all into and weave it into a story like yours. And Memory of Glass definitely does that. I mean, like someone had said, I learned so much from it about Dutch history, about World War II history, and about parts of things that the Nazis did that I didn't know either. And so we read to be inspired, to be encouraged, to to slip into time in another place, but also to learn and to grow and inspire and to grow our faith. It's Christian fiction, and be
Yeah.
inspired in
It's
other
the hope.
ways. So thank you for doing that for us, and we're so glad
Yeah.
that you're here.
Thanks.
And we answered all the questions. Anybody have any other questions? We will be doing the giveaway drawings after the conclusion of the live. I'll be doing that, and I will post the winners. But we just want to say thank you, Melanie, so much. This has been a great first live
Oh,
chat for our group.
I'm
It's been
so glad it
so
worked
much
out.
fun. I know the technology. We're just like, thank you, Lord, thank you. The technology has been fine overall. There were some
Overall,
hiccups
yeah.
there. Yeah, and we did this
You're still
split time
frozen on my
thing.
screen.
Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry.
It's okay.
You're not frozen on mine, so we hope everyone
Good.
can see both of us moving, but at least they can hear us. We'll take
Yeah,
it. But
we'll take
technology.
it. Thank you, Morgan. This
Thanks
is really
so
fun.
much. Thank you,
Yeah.
and keep writing this books. We're excited to read your next one, your next release. And those who have
Mm.
not read Memories of Glass, pick it up. Here it is. Well, backwards at least. But look how beautiful the cover is. Pick it up and check it out. Put it on your very long, I know. Move it up a few spots on that to be read pile, as we all have. Exactly. But thank you so much, and we will
Yeah.
we'll catch y'all on the group.
All right, sounds good.
So everybody,
Bye. Thank you.
bye.